By the end of this video, you're going to have a better understanding of how to use AdWords for your home service business. Stay tuned. So today on Contractor Cast, we've got Stephen Gens, our PPC specialist, on the show to come in and talk a little bit about Google AdWords and what home service contractors can do to optimize their Google AdWords and get the most out of it for their service business. So welcome to the show, Stephen. How's it going?
What's up, Wayne? Thank you for having me.
You're actually our first guest on the show. So
very nice.
I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know how busy things are at the moment, so I do appreciate you taking the time. Tell the folks a little bit about yourself and how you got here with us here at Leads Nearby.
Sure, absolutely. So my background is a jack of all trades. That's probably the most fair way to say it. The reason for that is that basically from the last 5 years, I have been working very closely with my wife on her business, and she does social media management, and she has a blog full time, and she does essentially marketing for big companies like Johnson & Johnson, Nike, Reebok, through influencer marketing. And so I was the back end, right? So I helped her with her website, her SEO, PPC, and Facebook ads, things like that. And then it was really these last couple of years that I, just from doing everything, I just started to develop more of an interest specifically with paid ads, just because I saw that there was just a lot of value in that, and it was just something I enjoyed doing. And so when I saw a position with Leads Nearby open up, it was just kind of a good marriage of sort of what I like to do in skills, what you all were looking for. So that's how I kind of got here in a nutshell.
Well, that's awesome, because I know that we really needed someone like you on our team, and I know that our clients thus far have been really happy with that. So, and I know they're getting a lot of value out of having someone dedicated to their AdWords and Facebook spending accounts. So it's good to hear.
Absolutely, I'm here to spin that web, drum up that business.
So, like I mentioned at the beginning, our clients and even people who aren't our clients, who just come in contact that we come in contact with, have a lot of questions when it comes to AdWords, PPC, etc. Right? Yeah. Some people love it, some people hate it, but as are all things with Google, it's usually a necessary evil to some degree. Google is Google, and you have to sort of play, or you have to play that game with them and be there. So
it's a double-edged sword with that. It's a pay to play. And I always find too that the people who hate Google Ads are the ones who just aren't good at it because they're not getting the results, or they just have really crazy expectations. So to what you were just saying, I've kind of heard the full gambit from people's opinions on that. It's been really interesting.
Yeah, and I think, like you just mentioned, those expectations usually come from not necessarily knowing all the ins and outs about AdWords or any kind of pay-per-click or pay-per-lead platform, because your expectation is always so high when you're spending that kind of money, right? Guys who put money out there want to see an ROI, a return on their investment, and sometimes that's the expectations are just way too high in terms of what they, or they just don't know enough to get the minimal type of results that they should be getting.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people seem to think that with Google, they put $100 in, they're going to get thousands out, and it can be possible, but I think realistically, depending on your business and kind of what you're targeting, that's not always the case. So it's kind of all over the place.
Absolutely. And so that brings up a good question that as you mentioned, the amounts there. What type of that's one of the questions we get a lot from our clients, or again, people who aren't our clients, but what type of budget should home service contractors especially be looking at to sort of be competitive and get their program going?
Yeah, so I think it's important to note first of how Google charges people for their ads. So Google has different types of ads. I think most people are familiar with search ads, which are when you go to google.com or just you Google something, whatever you type into that search bar and whatever is populated, that's a keyword. And that's sort of what that's exactly what you bid on in order to see how much it costs for that ad to show up. So, there are, and maybe not everyone knows this, but there are different levels of prices for, different industries. I think the most expensive are people like insurance and legal AdWords. So if you ever Google something looking for legal or insurance, those ads, Geico and Progressive of the world, they're paying a ton for those clicks, sometimes upwards of $200 a click, which is insane to me. Service contractors have a little bit easier. I've seen it range from a couple of bucks all the way up to $25 a click. It's really just based on geographically and your type of business. So all that to say, I think, again, it's sort of, again, it varies very much on your industry, whether you're an HVAC guy, an electrician, the season we're in, if it's a busier season, you have a lot of competitors, that affects the price. And then geographically, where you are in the US. Generally speaking, I like to say at a minimum, you should be willing to put anywhere from 750 to 1250 in Google. Okay. As far as Facebook is concerned, that's the other platform that I deal with. I would say at the minimum $500 a month, and to really just kind of put in and make it worth your while. Because again, these platforms are smart, but they need to learn, and in order to learn, you have to run them for a little bit. And if you don't have a budget, that's going to be impossible, and it's going to be a waste of time and money.
And so, yeah, you make a good point there with, your market, right? I think that's also where a lot of guys that we come into contact with they're not that familiar with that either, right? So if you're in one of these high traffic areas like a Las Vegas or like a Miami or something like that, the amount of money that you're going to have to pay to play, and as you mentioned, is going to be a lot higher than someone in Oklahoma or somewhere in Nebraska or something like that, where the competition isn't as great, and that's the main driving force behind those keywords going up. I mean, at the end of the day, like you mentioned, it's an auction, right? So the more people in the room bidding on AC repair in Miami, the more expensive that's going to be. So I wish our clients knew that more often than not. So.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, it's a little intuitive in the sense where when you have these really densely populated areas like your Southern California, your Vegas, your Miami, you're in New York, you have a ton of people searching. You just have a larger volume of people, searching for your service and your competitor service. So Google, it's just sort of a supply and demand, business 101. There is a lot of demand, and so Google is able to charge a little bit more for those keywords because people are willing to pay that to, attract that large pool of people.
And another thing that I just thought about while you were saying that is the proportion of money that should be spent towards Google AdWords versus another product of Google, which is Google Local Services, which a lot of people don't necessarily differentiate between, since it also shows up at the very top in a search on a search page. What's your thought on the amount of money that someone should be maybe putting towards AdWords versus Google Local Services?
That's a great point. And unfortunately, Google doesn't necessarily make it very easy. I mean, they do and they don't make it easy to understand sort of their different services that they offer. I think I want everyone to know, walking away from this conversation, if anything else, know this. Google is a business to support Google. That's what they want. They're the biggest search platform. That's obvious. But at the end of the day, they're trying to generate revenue for themselves. So whether it's local services, Google AdWords, YouTube ads, things like that, that's money they're trying to get. So I say all that to say, sometimes Google Ads isn't the end all be all. Google Local Services is, for those of you who are listening, are like, what in the world is that? Like if you go and you're in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we are, and you Google plumber near me, you put that into the search bar. At the very, very top, even before ads, you're going to have this list of Google guaranteed businesses with a little green shield or badge. And that's Google Local Services, which is a different budget than Google Ads. And so, again, but it's an ad nonetheless. At the end of it, and this is what I mean by it's simple and it's kind of complicated because it is an ad, but it isn't either, And so to answer your question, the way that I operate, and I know you and I have talked about this before, is if I'm working with a client and Google Ads just isn't producing the results that we want, either because the competition is too fierce, the keywords are too expensive, I don't know, they're just not doing what we want, and Google Local Services is doing a really great job, I say allocate all the budget I don't get paid anymore whether you dump $1 million into Google Ads or $15. We would just want results, with our
Right.
company anyway. And
Right.
so uh, I would say in the beginning, granted, I'm very biased because I do Google Ads. I would say 75-25, but it's all dependent on where you are. And I know you work with a lot of clients with local services. A lot of our other team members do. So, but my opinion is to start out 75-25. You probably ask different people, get different answers, and
Oh,
then
sure.
just see.
Absolutely.
And if it's working, local services better, put all the money into it. I'm not, feelings aren't hurt there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I always think about is just dominating that landscape, right? So that search page, and you have to sort of be on in all parts of it, in the Google local services, in the ad, uh, if someone is close to you, in the map, and
Yeah.
then finally let that person see you again, very high in the organic, right? So if you can be, try to tell clients this all the time, if you can be in all those places on that one page and consume that much real estate on that one page, it makes it really difficult for someone not to choose you, right? Because they're sort of being reinforced with, oh, they must know what they're doing, or they must know what they're, they must be reputable in that sense because they're all over the page.
I was just about to say that. I think what you just said is well said, but I think the biggest benefit of being all over Google is reputation. When you're driving down the street and you see different things from Nike or just these big companies like that, it's like that just sort of this just reminds you, hey, this is a brand that, I mean, they're big time. They can have these different advertisements. They want the business, and it's the same thing digitally. If you can have a Google Guaranteed badge, you can have an ad. We have within Google Ads, there's what's called Display Network, which is you can put your branding. So when people are searching, you're showing up there too. You can retarget people who've been to your websites. Again, that's just like you said. That's just always being top of mind. Because look, all the listeners that are service contractors, we don't need to tell them that most people are looking for them when they have a problem. No one in their leisurely time is trying to figure out who their local plumber or HVAC guy is. No, it's crap hit the fan. Who do we call? But if you're being exposed to a brand, you don't need to think about it. No one wants to sit there and think about different local services. They just want to go with the person they trust and they know.
Absolutely. And so, like, yeah, that kind of brings me into my next question, because dominating that landscape, as I just mentioned. So how much of a factor should your competitors play into you doing Google AdWords?
I would argue that that's the number one reason why you would want to do Google Ads. I think if you're listening to this and you're like, I can put my brand out there. I have a really good word of mouth business going for myself. I get a lot of repeat business. First of all, good for you. But second of all, you're missing out on huge opportunities that your competitors are just absolutely swooping in and taking from you. Because I have news for you. You could have a large network of word of mouth, but I doubt it's the millions of people that search Google, in your local area. Unless you're in somehow rural Alaska listening to this, I apologize, you're in the right. But if you're anywhere else in the continental US, chances are your surrounding and your service areas are large enough to where it's not every single person. And every single person in your service area is using Google. So your competitors are being found on Google. They're getting top of mind to people, and they're just taking your business, plain and simple.
Yeah, because I hear a lot of times from clients, I don't do Facebook, or I don't do Google because of whatever gripe you may have with them. But your customer is, right. So it's like you could say that all you want, but your customer, as you just mentioned, all over the place, millions of them, they are using those platforms. And if you're not, you're definitely going to be falling behind to some degree at least. You may have some success if you're just doing SEO, but you're leaving out. I forget what the percentage is right off the top of the head, but that the percentage of people who click on the ads versus the percentage of people who click on the map, get down to the organic listings. You've already lost out at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it best earlier, which is if you want to be the most places you can possibly be. And Google, without getting too much in the weeds, really does have a lot of great tools to help you do just that, through their different types of ads, the display ads, discovery ads, search ads, YouTube ads. They really do have a really good offensive strategy with that. So really just, again, reach the people you want to reach. Because look, everyone listening, especially the service contractors, know that they're not reaching the people, as many people as they possibly could. And I've talked to a contractor earlier today where, he's going to send me some zip codes of neighborhoods that he has been wanting to target, and we're going to be able to do that within Google Ads, and get really specific with the verbiage that we use to that community. So again, there's ways to do it, but without it or having an in somehow, it's going to be really, really tough.
So I mean that brings up another question that we get quite a bit. Or people that people don't necessarily understand. How much attention does Google draw? When compared to these other platforms, we've mentioned a couple of them already, but I think attention is Google requires or consumes a lot of people's attention. And how much do you think it consumes compared to these other platforms that are out there?
Yeah. So I mean, to give you an idea. In the US, Google owns the first and second most used search. And so you might be thinking, what the heck? Like, what else does Google have, or what are people searching on that's as large as Google? And it's not as large, but YouTube. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the US right now. People turn to YouTube for hows, whys, tutorials, comparisons, reviews. And we're a very video centric culture. I think that's pretty obvious, but Google owns both those. So to answer your question, hundreds of millions of people is who they reach. And then, you have your popular social networks and things like that. But I mean, Google and YouTube are capturing, I would argue, 70% of pretty much all search traffic.
So how do you, as some of our guys might be at home asking, how do you stand out then? All these different platforms, how do you, as a plumber, as an electrician, how do you stand out and get the most out of that ad?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, that's the $1 million question, right? Is sort of, how do I differentiate my business from, in some areas, the 30 to 40 other service contractors, not to mention the guys in the truck who don't even have a brick and mortar, taking my business out there. I've heard that story before from service contractors. And I think the answer is a few things. One is, first, look at yourself, in your business. What are your customers saying? We can take what your customers are saying about the things they like about you and really displaying that and highlighting that in an ad. I personally don't like to what I call race to the bottom, which is just, sale, coupon. I almost call that a last resort. So I don't really like to negotiate price, as the main thing. I always like to talk about the service, the job, the reviews. The reviews are huge. Talking about that, the customers that you've helped and things like that. And then of course the what you use to attract people with the copy or the what we say in our ads, to really help attract people. We have these strong action words that we use, these really strong call to actions to really stop people scrolling and look at your ad and click on it. So to put that and condense that to a list, I would say, look at your current existing company and the strengths it has, have a strong call to action. And then 3, and things that we do here at Leads Nearby is have a really good landing page, have a good website to bring people to. I think if you can have those 3, I think you're going to set yourself apart.
Well, I think that just made me think of something as well. Like the term that comes to my mind is relevancy, right? So like you can be more successful the more relevant your keyword is to what someone is searching. And again, as you mentioned, that landing page that they land on being relevant to what they search on. You don't want someone searching for, AC tune-up to land on a heating page, right? You want
right.
You want them to land on and that's why I think a lot of people also get that wrong when they try to push everyone to their homepage. And you really want to diversify, where you're sending that traffic to make sure that they are landing on something that they intently, searched for. So they're so they're getting the most relevant information that's possible.
Yeah, and I think too, going back to what I was saying earlier, my big point about Google is trying to make money for Google. A really strong example of that is that when you go, if you've never had a Google Ads account and you're listening to this, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to try it. and you create your Google Ads account and you're a service contractor, really just anyone, Google will automatically put you in their sort of smart automated account campaign creation, which ultimately means you're putting in a lot of money to test and learn, in order to get results. But I mean, anybody like you and I know, and other people who know the industry and know the platform, know that you can get out of that sort of default, way to create a campaign and start to do it, really just the smart way. But it's like the layperson doesn't really know that, in order to take full advantage of it. So it's more than just even setting yourself apart. It's just knowing the platform and then setting yourself apart. It's almost like a foundational bit you have to know first before you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned that earlier as well, right? Like, so just knowing that, Google is out to make money for Google first and foremost. Right? It doesn't, it's not upset when you're successful as a business, but ultimately, the whole platform, the whole thing is set up for Google to make money. So if you just go by what Google, labels as a default setting, and in this, I forget what they call it, but it's not the main AdWords account that we typically use. But and using that, then you're really sort of, like you mentioned, leaving it up to Google to drive the way, and hoping, that in turn it also brings business your way and makes you successful in the same vein. So.
Yeah, Google is such a smart salesperson, because they opt you into this sort of platform or this entry campaign creation to really get the most money out of you with strong promises of high ROI and reaching these audiences. And it's they're not wrong, they're just really sneaky, and I always warn people, even when I talk to clients who aren't necessarily going to work with us, or they're on the fence, or they're just curious for information, I just say, hey, listen, whether you use us or not, you need to find someone, or you need to dedicate time to learn the platform, because you're going to get your lunch eaten by Google otherwise.
Yeah, and when you use that default platform that they kind of give you, that starter platform, it leaves out a lot of the things that you could do. Like we mentioned earlier, like the remarketing side of things, running those YouTube ads. Those are things you can't even begin to do in there. You have to be in the more advanced in the dashboard in order to even get a hold of those things. And so, you definitely have to learn it. I mean, anyone can, for sure, if you take the time to do so. But most people are out there running their business. They don't have the time to on top of that learn Google AdWords, and on top of that learn Facebook, and on top of that learn all these other things that they need to be doing. So definitely, if you're listening to this and you're wanting someone to take a look at it, Stephen is your guy. He will.
Well, I was going to say, Wayne, you and I have beat our head against the wall for a long time on this platform, and I still do it to this day.
Yeah.
And so hey, don't stress yourself out. Especially if you're a business operator listening to this and feeling anxious all of a sudden because you're behind the eight ball. I mean, you're not. There's people out there who can help and that you can hire. Just outside of AdWords, that's just a smart business decision, is to hire people that are a strength to your weakness, unless you can develop put the time into learning it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Steve, I think that's it for today, man. I really appreciate you taking the time coming on. We're definitely going to have you back to talk more. Probably next time more on the Facebook side of things. Look forward to having those discussions as we go.
Absolutely. Well, Wayne, I really appreciate being here. I love being your first guest. Us PPC guys have an ego. We like results, and we like being in the mix. So I'm happy to be the first guy here.
Where you were my first click, you made it all the way to the top. You were there.
Yeah, I put in an ad. I'm at the top. I'm top of mind.
Your budget, right? Your budget was right on point to this. We're all good. Again, I appreciate you taking the time, Stephen. We'll talk to you again later on.
Sounds good, Wayne. Good seeing you.
All right. So thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Contractor Cast. As always, if the content was valuable and useful for you, please let us know in the comments below. If you're not already an existing client, please feel free to reach out to us either through our website or by giving us a call directly. We're always willing and able to work with new clients on an individual basis. Until next time, take care.